Donald Trump in 2026 still has that gut notion of how he's going to try to put one over on you. Now, he may not be that sharp now in trying to do it, but it's still there. And to just simply say that the guy has dementia, it just washes away the fact that he and his administration are causing serious damage, not because he has dementia, but because they're vicious.
Hi, I'm Maddie Hale and welcome to the Trump Report. Today I've got Professor Scott Lucas on the show from the Clinton Institute, University College Dublin, to really kick off the new beginning of the week. I know that it's been a week, I guess, since the Epstein files were dropped by the DOJ, but there is still so much to discuss. So we're going to focus on that along with a few other things. And just a reminder that you can watch us every day, Monday through Friday on the Trump Report YouTube page, or you can stream us as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Scott, thank you so much for joining the Trump Report.
Hey, Maddie, same week, more chaos.
More chaos. Now, as I mentioned, I think I just want to paint the picture as to why you and I are still covering this for our audience. We know that our audience love to really know the updates of the Epstein files, but just for their understanding, last Friday, the week before Friday, these files, there was over 3 million files that dropped, or less than. We don't really know from what they've told us, but it just means that people are still really sifting through to see what's really pointing out to them. So that's the reason why we're going to continue covering this as more comes to light. So let's start off with one that's been making the rounds the last few days. This was an email from Jeffrey Epstein sent to journalist Michael Wolff, who has, before this last drop and before then, featured heavily in Epstein emails. So he sends an email in late December 2017, so nearly a year after Trump's first inauguration. He writes, "Some dinner with Donald last night. We're concerned about dementia. Tons of makeup. Did not recognize old friends." So, of course, doesn't say Donald Trump, says Donald, but Trump and Epstein, from our knowledge, had a falling out around 2004. We know through emails that Epstein very much kept tabs on Donald Trump, especially during his first presidency. But what was your reaction to seeing this? If this was Epstein saying, look, he's had spoken to people that had dinner with him and they think he has dementia?
Well, tons of makeup. That checks. But is the orange guy demented at that point? I don't look. Jeffrey Epstein is not very nice when it comes to Trump by 2017. He doesn't like the fact that he's fallen out with him. Michael Wolff isn't a big fan of Trump's either, and so they're exchanging a bit of gossip here. I've got to treat this with a grain of salt, Maddie, just with the basics, which is, in 2017, Trump is there in the first year of his presidency, and almost 9 years later, he's here in the second go as president. I think he is not mentally stable. I think in 2026, he's mentally declining. But I think in 2017, you need to get to what we know of Trump and so on in terms of assessing this. We know that Trump garbles words. Remember the infamous Covfefe incident on Twitter, making up the name of an African country, not real, at one point implying that Texas is not in the United States. Trump, in other words, gets scrambled at the best of times because his mouth is just running, right? And he don't necessarily have the brain to match it. But to say that means he has dementia, I wouldn't go there, because what you do is you give an easy reach for people who don't like Trump, where they don't have to analyze what's happening. But secondly, you give him an easy out, which is, I'm just going to blame this on dementia, rather than on the fact that this is a guy who quite often is incoherent and has been for decades, who quite often doesn't know what he's talking about, but still, and this is the key point, has a street fighter's instinct. Donald Trump in 2026 still has that gut notion of how he's going to try to put one over on you. Now, he may not be that sharp now in trying to do it, but it's still there. And to just simply say that the guy has dementia, it just washes away the fact that he and his administration are causing serious damage, not because he has dementia, but because they're vicious. And that's where we ought to start.
And it's an easy insult. Of course, this email was from 2017. We know that, as you mentioned, Epstein was not a fan of him by this point. He was emailing Michael Wolff constantly with links to articles about him when he was running for president and then once he was inaugurated. But there's another email, Scott, from August 2015. Epstein attaches a photo, sends it to Peter Attia of a dinner which has Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg in it. In the context, he writes, "Where are you? I might be in LA on Monday in Burbank to look at the interior of the other BBJ. Tonight, dinner with Musk, Thiel, and Zuckerberg." So by August 2015, Epstein had already pleaded guilty years earlier to state charges in Florida for prostitution-related offenses. So just to provide context for where we're at in terms of his criminality. But so despite several emails seeing Musk and Epstein discussing partying on the island, we don't think that Musk ever went there, but there was discussions of it. This photo and these previous emails kind of contradicts Elon Musk's claim, Scott, that he's had really no ties to the late pedophile.
Yeah, which is like, it's not true. I mean, he did run in the circles, which included Epstein. He's not the only person that's lied about this, right? Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has lied as well. There have been others who've tried to walk away from the fact that, despite the fact that Jeffrey Epstein had solicited sex from a girl who was a prostitute, had been given a plea bargain conviction in Florida on it, these guys still see Epstein as someone that they'll deal with because of whether it's the financial links, whether because Epstein might have political influence. He's a mover and a shaker. And what is interesting about this specific here is he's moving and shaking, or trying to do so, with the tech bros. Musk, Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel. Now in 2026, Musk, Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel, still the tech bros, still with varying degrees of influence, still with varying degrees of a relationship to the Trump administration. So they're going to try to detach themselves completely from what Epstein brings. What I would be interested in is, let's get beyond the specifics of Epstein's pedophilia. There's no evidence that these guys are connected with Epstein's pedophilia. But what are the type of financial discussions that are going on here? What type of arrangements are being brokered? Because in 2026, one of the big stories amidst the Trumpist chaos is that the tech bros are out there in terms of all kinds of deals, which are get-rich deals, which involve all kinds of questions regarding technology, regarding AI, regarding cryptocurrency. So what exactly are they discussing with Epstein more than a decade earlier? We may not have that answer from the files, but at the very least, we know that you cannot put up a wall between yourself and Epstein if you're these people. There were connections and they were there.
So on that note, and on the note of kind of redactions in terms of names, there's quite a few people that were named in the files involved in criminality that are redacted. So that's kind of where the conversations come into play about why were victims' names and faces not redacted, but why were people committing crimes redacted. So Republican Congressman Thomas Massey, him alongside a Democrat Ro Khanna, they have been the bipartisan pair that pushed for the original release of the files, but they believe that all 6 million files from Epstein should be released, and that victim safety should have been a paramount priority when it came to releasing these files. So Massey has now tweeted that he's going to the Department of Justice today to view the unredacted Epstein files, and he asked anyone on Twitter if they have certain files that they want him to check, if they want him to look at reductions and kind of get more answers on certain things. So I'm going to read out a few of the replies, Scott. So, and we'll get your reaction to this. So Kat Dasson replied to Thomas Massey asking him to check out who emailed Epstein in 2014 saying, "Thanks for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty." Someone else asked who emailed Epstein in 2010 with "the Snow White was twice as soon as she put on her costume." Someone else asked Massey who emailed Epstein in 2010 with "I give you permission to kill him. He is apparently with blank. He lied to you and he lied to me." Someone else says who emailed Epstein in 2013 writing "the newer Brazilian just arrived, sexy and cute, 9 years old." Someone else says 2009. Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video. Someone else said, find out 2010. Someone emails, Happy New Year. Yes, I'm here. Just got my visa. I'll go to the 2B Riga agency tomorrow if you want. I'll walk around. There are little girls. They have good bodies, but the faces are weird. And they are not so tall. So these are just a few of the things that people have written into Thomas Massie, asking him to find out more information and what these redactions were. So, I mean, your response to this, Scott?
Well, I'll give you a broader story beyond all of this. Look, first of all, let's just make it clear. If this had been a sensible administration doing what it should have done, it would not have just simply, after a year of stonewalling, dumped half of the files and then had no guide, no steer through these in terms of categories, in terms of a decent catalog, which takes place. They're making people do the work for them, the FBI, right? So they're making now the Congress people who get in to see the 3 million files that weren't released, you go do the work. You go find where there might be leads here, right? We're not going to give you any type of steer. So there's still a level of protection here. Make us, tell us what files you think we should have pursued. Now, here's the big one. In 2019, 3 days after Jeffrey Epstein died, the FBI had 10 potential co-conspirators. Now, co-conspirators could be co-conspirators involved with some of Epstein's financial dealings, or it could be co-conspirators specifically related to the pedophilia. There were details of the subpoenas that were going to be issued on those co-conspirators that briefly went up on the DOJ website, and then it came down. Where is that document? Why is that important? Because I don't know if you noticed it this weekend, Maddie, and it may have been lost because it was Super Bowl weekend and everybody's talking about the big football game, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But the Trump administration tried a PR offensive over the weekend, which said, look, in the summer of 2025, prosecutors went through all the Epstein files and they concluded that there was no reason to charge anybody in the Epstein files, right? No reason to charge them with relation to Epstein's finances or relations to pedophilia. Now, a month after this, Kash Patel in August 2025 gave a garbled statement in a Senate hearing, always garbled because it's Kash, which said there's no reason to pursue any other people out of what took place. This is hinky, and this is why it's hinky, Maddie. If there had been a clear decision by prosecutors not to proceed in July 2025, why was this not announced in a formal way in July 2025 when they'd done it? Why did we not get that attempt to define the Epstein files then? Why are we only learning about it now? And the reason why we're learning about it now is they're trying to shut down the story again in terms of what else might be in the files. And that's just par for the course with the Trump folks. Now, I'm not saying that if we get out of the current files, if we get redacted portions unredacted, to give some of the names that you're talking about that have been withheld, I'm not saying that we will necessarily get out of the files that have not even been disclosed enough that might say there should be criminal charges, but at least there would be information about those who were connected with Epstein, who at least could have known of what was going on. We're having to rely on people like Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna, and other legislators to go in there to try to bring this out for us, rather than relying on the people who should have done it, the FBI and the Justice Department.
So on that note, over the weekend, of course, Super Bowl, various Epstein survivors released a short Super Bowl weekend video showing them holding childhood photos and calling for the full release of the remaining government Epstein files. So the ad urges the DOJ to stop withholding documents, saying survivors and the public deserve the truth about Epstein and his criminal network. So, I mean, as I mentioned, just for context, there is still around 3 million files that weren't released to the public. So how likely is it that you think we will see these files?
We're in a tug of war, Maddie. I mean, we're in an absolute tug of war. Just a quick reminder here. after the initial very, very limited release of some Epstein information in December, the Justice Department made clear that if it was in terms of people who potentially could be accused of nefarious activity, those names would be withheld, right? They did not say protect the victims initially. They said protect the men who might be identified in these files. They said that back in December. A week ago, after the release of the 2.7 million pages that came out, Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, Donald Trump's personal lawyer, said, there's no reason to prosecute Donald Trump. There's no reason to prosecute anybody. Tried to shut it down at that point. What we have now is the attempt by legislators who had to fight for months to get the files released, now going in to try to see what is still being withheld. And I can't tell you where this is going to lead, because there's a level where there's politics, which is playing out here. There is a level where there should be a definite legal process, but there is that important level that you reminded us of. Just as those women came out in November when they were trying to get Congress to pass the bill for the release of the files, and they were brave enough to hold up their photos when they were girls, at the time when they were abused. They were brave enough to come forward as women, knowing the backlash that they might get. They have come forward again. And all they are saying is not do this do this to be mean to Donald Trump, to do this to be kind to Democrats. They're saying it, do this for justice. Hear our voices. And in this tug of war, that's still the fundamental question, whether they will be heard.
Speaking of the Super Bowl, Bad Bunny was the halftime show, as probably everyone in the world knows. It was a performance that celebrated Puerto Rican and Latino culture. So Trump responded to this performance on True Social. He said the Super Bowl halftime show is an absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever. It makes no sense, is an affront for the greatness of America, and doesn't represent our standards of success, creativity, or excellence. Nobody understands a word this guy is saying, and the dancing is disgusting, especially for young children that are watching this throughout the US and all over the world. The show is just a slap in the face to our country, which is setting new standards and records every single day. I mean, I usually wouldn't include a story like this in our chat, Scott, but I did find this quite funny, because I felt like Trump really fell into this trap that we thought he might. Almost like Bad Bunny was really poking the bear with this one, and he fell right into this trap. A lot of people were responding to this post from him, saying, especially for young children, how hypocritical as we as we ask for the full release of the Epstein files. Obviously, they're not correlated in any way, but I mean, your reaction to this, that you see, we just need to acknowledge that how bizarre it is to see the President of the United States commenting on the halftime show in such a negative manner.
Look, the day that Donald Trump is my cultural guide is the day you better put 6 feet of dirt on top of me. All right? I mean, the guy don't know who Bad Bunny is, right? Or at least he's never heard a single song by Bad Bunny. He just knows that Bad Bunny is a guy who's a different color, who comes from a place called Puerto Rico, which Donald Trump has only really visited to throw, if you remember, towels at people as some part of a relief effort after Hurricane Maria a few years ago. Bad Bunny is someone that Donald Trump, he represents stuff that Donald Trump despises, right? People with a different culture, different background, don't speak the English, and they come in to take over our Super Bowl, our American football event. How dare they, right? And the reason why I'm wound up about this is, let's say this really quickly. That's a hell of a halftime show. I don't know if you watch it, but that's it. And I've sat through some really, really bad halftime shows. Justin Timberlake, I'm still looking at you for what you and Janet Jackson did years ago, right? And then you get this incredible celebration from start to finish of Bad Bunny's personal upbringing, right? It's very much a personal story that's there, that jacket with his mother's birth date on it. You get that immediate celebration of Puerto Rico, right? With the shaved ice stands that are there, where he hands the ring to someone who's going to propose to a girl, right? He's got all the dancers there. He goes then to the casita, the little house that he falls through the roof from. There's all types of like famous folks behind him, videos. Then Lady Gaga pops up. And how can you hate something that Lady Gaga is in, right? Putting that out there. And then Ricky Martin, La Vida Loca guy, Puerto Rico, he's back, right? They're playing Daddy Yankee as well. And at the end, he pulls this all together. He goes, this is a celebration of Puerto Rico. This is a celebration of the United States, and it's a celebration of the Americas. He name checks all of those countries it takes place, right? And it's happy and it's positive. And the couple who are there posing as if they are getting married and all this, they actually got married. That was an official wedding in the middle of Bad Bunny's performance, right? And I'm going, there's all this joy there, except for one guy sitting probably alone in the White House eating Cheetos and McDonald's or whatever. And he's going, why aren't people watching the Turning Point USA halftime show, which is sad, and it is sad, but they're sad Charlie Kirk got killed last year. Bad Bunny versus Turning Point USA, easy choice. Now it should rest there, but here's the problem. I'm one of 2 American commentators on US politics in Ireland. Mainly, there's more than 2, but there's 2 of us that tend to, drop by and chat with folks. The other one gets on this morning and says, what an election gift to Donald Trump. What an election gift to Donald Trump. Now I'm going, dude, that halftime performance was a gift for America. That was a gift for America. And if you're so worried about Donald Trump's racism and his xenophobia and his chaotic temper, that you're willing to try to bury that celebration of what America can be, you need to go into the corner and sit down and have a long think. Because what Donald Trump was trying to do is a guy who has screamed about cancel culture for years to try to exploit culture wars. He was carrying out cancel culture with that tweet. You shouldn't be watching Bad Bunny. And he was doing it with a dog whistle to people, which says you shouldn't listen to Bad Bunny because he's different. And those people who like him are different. And that's exactly the type of poison that, hey, La Vida Loca and everything else that Bad Bunny brought to the table last night, man, like I said, choose your sides here. You want to play culture wars? Choose your sides. I'm with the guy who got 80,000 people absolutely up on their feet and dancing, rather than the single guy in the White House who I suspect wasn't dancing and didn't understand a single word of a single song that he was hearing. Puerto Rico was on its knees after Hurricane Maria several years ago. You know the many thousands of people that died in that. You know that the island was cut off for months because of the first Trump administration, how it cocked that up. And what you saw, let's begin with this, is Puerto Rico, which is part of the United States, even if they don't speak English as the main language, they were there. This was everything that was joyous coming out of tragedy. If you can't hang on to that, back into the corner with you.
Over the last Thursday, Trump, his team posted this video to his account where at the end of the video, they've depicted Barack and Michelle Obama as apes, which of course has racial connotations to it, despite Trump the next day, well, his team the next day taking down the video. The president has still refused to apologize over this blatant racism. So this even prompted Republicans to condemn the video. So we've seen Senator Tim Scott call the post the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House, urging Trump to take it down. Mike Lawler said it was wrong, incredibly offensive. Roger Wicker said it was totally unacceptable. John Curtis said it was blatantly racist, inexcusable. Katie Britt said should never have been posted to begin with. John James called it shocking and appalling. I mean, what was your reaction to this post, Scott? The fact that Trump won't apologize, but also just the fact that we're seeing time and time again, several Republicans turning on Trump and his inner circle for various things that they've done.
Thank God some Republicans have a line. I mean, they had a line that you can't sit and be like overtly racist on social media for the President of the United States. Now, whether they'll stand up to Trump on other issues, we'll see. I'm just going to cut to the core on this because there are no excuses here. There's no, and you come at us on YouTube, all you Trump, you come, there is no excuse here for what took place. And that is a combination of one, Donald Trump hates the Obamas, despises them, and two, he's a racist. Bottom line, he's a racist. And for him to then come out and say, well, first of all, remember the White House said at some point, hey, what's the big deal here? Hey, what's the big deal? This came from another video, right? And it's only a couple seconds. What's the big deal? Then it became, hey, a staffer put this out. It had nothing to do with Donald Trump. And then it became Donald Trump saying, oh yeah, I'm the one that said put it out, but I didn't know what was in the back, the last few seconds of the video. It's like, really? Really? You didn't know what was in that video that you just sit there and put out? It's just supposedly about election manipulation? No, you knew what you were doing, right? And I'll point you to other images, racist images he's put up on Twitter, and other racist images about the Obamas he's put up. We'll see. Look, I'm going to ask you, Maddie, if you put that on your social media account, would you be speaking to me from Times Radio today? No, I suspect you'd have your bags packed and out of the office. If I had posted that, would I have been working for University College Dublin? No. Out. Why this man is allowed to even temporarily get away with this type of racism on a day-to-day basis, right? Because he will be back at it again. I don't know. I just say let's bring this down in terms of practical politics, which is when it comes to the economic, the political, and the social issues, are the Republicans going to draw a line against Trump from bringing race into the discussion? Are they finally going to firewall this? If they don't, it doesn't really matter that a few of them said, oh, he made a mistake or he shouldn't have put this video out, because what it means is they give him a pass on almost everything else. And no one, doesn't matter who you are, no one should get a pass for that type of video.
Professor Scott Lucas, thank you so much for joining the Trump Report.
Thank you very much, Maddie.